The AFC title game was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It was really the battle of two halves. When you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, everybody thought the game was over. How many people did I hear after the first half? I listened to so many people say the game was over. When it was 21-3, everybody thought the game was over. Even though at the end of the second quarter, that debacle of a play by Patrick Mahomes that really was costly. They could have gotten a field goal kick. He should have thrown in the end zone. He shouldn't have thrown, I guess, a slant pass to Tyreek Hill, and he couldn't get into the end zone, which cost him. They had no timeouts. He tried to call a timeout, and he didn't realize he had no timeout, which shows you that Patrick Mahomes wasn't really paying attention. Messing up on that play really lost the momentum going to the second half, and they actually got the ball in the second half, in the beginning of the second half, the Kansas City Chiefs. But really, it was Joe Burrow and what he does in the pocket, the cool and collective player that he is. There was never a thought in his mind that he was out of this game. Even when they were down 21-3 going to the second half, when he got interviewed, listen, I don't know if he's great friends with Jake Paul. Supposedly he is, and he's friends with Logan, and they hang out, whatever it is. And he wears his nice shades, and he smokes his cigars, and he wears his nice Nike chain, and all that other stuff, and he's color coordinated. Who knows? I understand they like to call him Joe Cool, and he's a young guy, and he has a great personality, but he doesn't seem like he's rattled at all. At all. Doesn't matter what the score of the game is. He believes that no matter where they are or what position they're in, that he can bring them back. And that is a quality that only one quarterback we've seen in the last 20 years do. And that is Tom Brady. I've been saying this over and over again. I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I'm a Jet fan. Everybody knows I have my own thoughts to Tom Brady. And we'll get into the Tom Brady retirement as well in just a few moments. But Joe Burrow, his understanding of standing into the pocket, figuring out how to move inside and out of the pocket, if he needs to go left or go right, throw an over-the-shoulder pass. It's amazing how this guy could read a play before it even happens. Tom Brady has been very, very known for that type of play as a quarterback. The one thing Tom Brady does that Joe Burrow doesn't do is Tom Brady likes to get the ball out of his hands as quick as possible. Joe Burrow doesn't do that. He holds the ball too long, which gets him into trouble. One of the highest sack rate quarterbacks in all of football. So you look at Joe Burrow, that's the only thing he doesn't do well like Tom Brady. But all in all, Joe Burrow in that game against Kansas City, who has a very good pass rush. You have Clark, you have Ingram, you have Jones. They can get at you in all different ways. And everybody thought they were going to dominate the line of scrimmage for what they were doing really in the second half, the Kansas City Chiefs of the season. They couldn't touch him. And the offensive line played very, very well. Speedy protected him. And I really believe that was the reason why Joe Burrow and the Bengals surprised the world and won the game in overtime.
The best quarterbacks are the ones that are also overcoming coach-proof and offensive line. Yes, they played better, but still an offensive line that we know is below average. Those are the best quarterbacks when it comes to the intangibles. And Joe Burrow definitely showed that, especially in the third quarter with play extensions. He did a great job outside the pocket, making tough throws. And Steve Spagnuolo never deviated from trying to double-team Jamar Chase the rest of the game. And Joe Burrow took advantage of that. You saw T. Higgins make a lot of big third down catches, tough catches. They were getting yards after the catch from a lot of their running backs. Even their backup running back had the first touchdown of the game, Samaje Perine. So Joe Burrow knew that Steve Spagnuolo was sticking to that. And it's weird because they weren't actually blitzing as much as you would have expected. Maybe they were thinking, okay, the Bengals don't have a great line. We don't have to rush the passer as much. And Joe Burrow adjusted to that too. Joe Burrow's naturally good against the blitz, but he was able to evolve his game when he realized, okay, the Chiefs aren't blitzing as much as I expected. And you saw one-on-one matchups. You saw them spread away to the outside a lot of the time to deviate away from the Honey Badger and from Nick Bolton, who's been a nice rookie linebacker for the Chiefs. Burrow was able to decoy them and be able to take advantage of everybody else because the Chiefs' corners are not great, like the Bengals' corners, but Joe Burrow has to know that in his head. I don't think the play calling really helped him. I don't really give a lot of credit to Zach Taylor. I don't think his play calling was great, but Joe Burrow adjusted to those play calls, audible when needed to, and found the best routes amidst all that. And that's the intangibles that you definitely need to win this game. I also give credit to the Bengals' defense, though. Their defensive coordinator did a very good job in the second half of not deviating away from their game plan.
Don't forget about McPherson.
Well, of course, 13 field goals in the playoffs. How could you pass that up? But Lou Anarumo, give him a lot of credit too. This is not a secondary that is overly great. Bates is a great safety, second or third probably best in football. Von Bell's a good safety, but their corner depth is iffy. And the Chiefs' receiving depth has been a lot better in the second half. But they didn't deviate away from the classic Bill Belichick game plan of letting a team run and stopping them when they need to. The Chiefs were actually able to run the ball pretty well in the first half with Jerick McKinnon, and then later in the second quarter with Hilaire. And the Bengals are normally good to stop the run, but they actually played the pass a lot more. But they didn't deviate in the second half, even when the Chiefs are up 21-3, they stayed aggressive, and the Bengals were ready for it. So I actually gave them a lot of credit when it comes to that, too, and taking away the middle of the field especially, and the yards after the catch, something the Buffalo Bills could not do.
And in overtime, I thought it was going to be whoever touched the ball first was going to win the game. It wasn't. And you saw Kansas City won the toss, and everybody went crazy. And then Kansas City and Mahomes did not look good. Joe Burrow got the ball back, brought the ball all the way down, and McPherson kicked the field goal, and they win the game. It was fantastic. And by the way, Mixon ran the ball so well in the game, especially in the overtime. They couldn't stop Joe Mixon. To me, going into the Super Bowl, you have to use Joe Mixon to run against the Rams, and we'll get into the Rams in just 1 second against San Francisco. But Joe Mixon is going to be a big part on the reason why if the Bengals are going to surprise the world and win the Super Bowl.
And Mixon was efficient, too, in that first half. He was probably the only one that played, out of this world good in the first half, too. And the second half, he wasn't running the ball a lot, but he was good receiving, and he still was efficient with a lot of the carries. And even at the end of the third quarter, too, had some big runs as well. Once the Chiefs were realizing, okay, we need to guard the deep ball more or guard the middle of the field more once they were finding Higgins a lot. Remember, too, this was also with their tight end, Uzama, injured as well. Yep. So they had a lot of good instinctual reads from Burrow as a result, and from Mixon as well. Those zone block, even the receivers blocking down the field. He was able to read all that, too, on screen passes, which, again, he's not a bad pass catching running back. It's not his forte normally. He's not a Eckler or a Kamara, but he still did well in terms of seeing the field in that game.
Absolutely. And the NFC title game, it was the battle of really what defense was going to show up and what defense wasn't going to show up. And both defenses played very, very well. And I think in the first half, it was San Francisco's defense that really dominated. In the second half, it was Aaron Donald and Von Miller in the fourth quarter completely tortured Jimmy Garoppolo, who's the worst. Yes, the worst quarterback in NFL history with quarterback rating and quarterback completion percentage in NFL history. A shout out to Jimmy Garoppolo. He's had a good career with San Francisco ever since he was traded to the San Francisco 49ers from New England. He's had a good career. He played in the Super Bowl. He was one play or two plays away from winning a Super Bowl, but it really affected him when they decided to draft a rookie quarterback and trade away 3 first-round draft picks for him. So I think he knows he's on his way out, but in this game, if he really wanted to prove himself to stay there, he needed to win this game, and he just in the fourth quarter just could not stay at the same pace as Stafford was playing. Matthew Stafford, the great quarterback that he has been over the years with the Lions, part of an organization that didn't know how to win. And yes, they had Calvin Johnson, but even with Calvin Johnson, they didn't have a running game. Their defense stunk. They couldn't build an offensive line if their life depended on it. He was really traded for the livelihood of the LA Rams. They gave up 2 first-round draft picks, Jared Goff, and a third-round pick. They practically gave away their future for a guy like Matthew Stafford. And Matthew Stafford has proven this year that he could be one of the top quarterbacks in the league with a great offense, with Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham, who had 7 touchdowns since he's been there, and really opened up the offense and opened up the opportunity to prove that his arm strength and his ability to inside and out of the pocket, that he can win with a good team. And what really showed me to the LA Rams that they were going to win this game was in the fourth quarter, in certain aspects of the game, especially when San Francisco was on their 40 and they were moving the ball very, very well, where Von Miller was causing havoc on the outside, and in the middle, you had Aaron Donald just push away guards, throw guards to the ground, and really put pressure on Jimmy Garoppolo where he couldn't do anything because there was so much pressure in the middle against him.
Yeah, this is also a defense in the Rams, too, that got other guys to step up, the unknown sources. We were thinking for a lot of the season, the Rams can't stop the run outside. The Rams can't stop tight ends. But we saw a lot of both the backup safeties and the linebackers also step up in this game very much so, too. The Niners were not able to run the ball consistently, especially once Deebo Samuel got hurt late in the second quarter. They were not able to run the ball consistently, and that's a forte of the way this offense is built. Now, granted, they do have some other injuries, too. They haven't had Mostert all year. Jeff Wilson was out of this game, too, and Deebo Samuel left the game. So maybe if Deebo Samuel's in the game, maybe it's a little different. But still, this is not a team.
I don't think so.
It hasn't stopped them before, so it's still kind of surprising they couldn't get nothing going. Now, in a close game like this, maybe it's a difference maker, but still, they weren't able to get anything. And that's not something that was thought of to happen against the Rams. Now, the Rams' defense against the run was very good last year, but that was with Brandon Staley as defensive coordinator. I think they were number 3 in the league, but this year they weren't as good. So it was definitely a big deal that they were able to stop the run at the end of that game. And also, after the George Kittle touchdown, they did a really good job taking him out of the game, too. They were able
How about the greatness of Cooper Kupp? 2 touchdowns in the game, over 140 yards. He was fantastic. And when you think of great wide receivers and some of the greatest wide receivers in the NFL and NFL history, they need to show up in the playoffs. And Cooper Kupp did it in the regular season, not like Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman wasn't a regular season type of wide receiver. He was a playoff wide receiver. Right. Cooper Kupp needed to prove himself as a playoff wide receiver as well as a regular season receiver. And this year, he was the best wide receiver in the regular season. He had the triple crown of wide receivers. And then going to the playoffs, everybody thought he was going to be stopped. There was too much pressure on him. And that's why they brought Odell Beckham. Boy, oh boy, were they wrong. Because if it wasn't for Cooper Kupp against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and if it wasn't for Cooper Kupp against San Francisco, guess who wouldn't be in the Super Bowl? That would be the LA Rams. And he was a major reason why they're where they are right now today.
This was a 49ers team that actually contained him, not well.
Nobody can contain him.
Yeah, nobody contained him to the standard that he had. He probably had the most consistent wide receiver year you'll ever see because he had less than 90 yards in only one game this year, and I think that was against the Titans. But even the Niners, when they beat him in the first meeting in the regular season, most of his yards came in garbage time. So they knew how to game plan for him better, and they still weren't able to do it in this game when it mattered most. He was able to escape a beautiful route on the first touchdown, then a tough catch on the second touchdown. He's really expanded his game, too, with his route running, with his size, his physicality, too. Something that you didn't really see in the beginning of his career when he was just more of like a number 2, number 3 type receiver. And I think they've been able to take advantage of that most of all when it comes to the other guys not really having the big games like they did in the rest of the playoffs. Outside of Odell. Odell had a nice game too, 113 yards, but it was really Kupp that took the attention away from that defense. And this Niners defense doesn't blitz, so when they had to single cover Cooper Kupp, it really was a hard matchup for them to do.
And as far as Tom Brady is concerned, over the last couple of weeks, we heard that Tom Brady was retiring after the Buccaneers lost against the LA Rams. And Tom Brady's father was very upset because it didn't come from Tom Brady's mouth. It came from the media. And then all of a sudden, about 3 or 4 days ago, a report came out, Adam Schefter came out, that Tom Brady has released that he is retiring. And then he wrote something on his social medias. He wrote something on his Twitter. He wrote something on his Instagram. As a New York Jet fan, I hated Tom Brady. Just as much as I hated Michael Jordan as a Knicks fan all those years. But you come to respect the greatness of all these players. And 10 years from now, I'm going to be able to say that I watched the great Tom Brady play at the prime of his career when he was drafted, just as much as I saw Michael Jordan in the prime of his career, being that I'm 39 years old, with some of the young guys, and some of the young guys listening to the show right now never got a chance to see Michael Jordan actually play at the prime of his career. What makes Tom Brady so special is not the Super Bowls. And everybody says, oh, he won 7 Super Bowls. No team's ever won as many Super Bowls as he's won as a single player. It's a team game. And Tom Brady has really dimensioned the game of football as a team game. Now, Tom Brady speaks out that he couldn't have done this. He couldn't have won all these Super Bowls without the players that he played with, without the coaches that coached him. Everybody calls it TB12.
Yeah.
And I think that's his dimension. His dimension and his understanding of the game is TB12. The way he saw the game, how special he was. And yes, he was a championship quarterback, and he did it in the big games, unlike some other great quarterbacks like the Drew Breeses of the world, or how about the Peyton Mannings of the world. He did it in the big games. But what made him special is his understanding of keeping his body in shape, that he can do it for a significant amount of time, that he retired at the age of 44. I don't remember the last quarterback that lasted until he was 44 years old.
No, I don't think there was. I don't think the only other one were kickers.
Yeah, so it is an amazing feat that he could keep himself healthy. But really, even though people hated him, absolutely couldn't stand him because of how many times he won and the greatness of who he was, the understanding that after the teams played against him and all the players played against him, that they realized that they were playing one of the greatest players, one of the greatest personalities in NFL history. And to lose a player like that now, where the NFL is having so many problems with what's going on and off the field, it's a catastrophe. Even as a Jet fan who couldn't stand Tom Brady, and look at the Jets, they were beating Tom Brady and the Buccaneers with what? a minute and 50 seconds left, and he brings the ball all the way down, and he wins the game against the Jets with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, depleted to Buccaneers. So the one thing I'll remember Tom Brady as is one, he really isn't a bad guy. He's a great person. He really is. He donates his time. He helps people. He's a good man on and off the field. I didn't know that. I always thought that he had something against New Yorkers, but some of his organizations and some of the things that he does in raising money for children and hospitals, and he helps a lot of New York organizations out here. So for Tom Brady to leave the NFL the way he did on top, and he did leave on top. He had the best numbers he's ever had in his career when it comes to statistics. He just couldn't get over the hump this year against an LA Rams team that was just fantastic. But to lose a player like this in this magnitude, it's sad. But you want to know something? He'll always be remembered as one of the greatest players, one of the more special players at his position in NFL history.